Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the workshop meeting for January, the Exeter School District Board of Directors. We did have a executive session prior to this meeting to discuss personnel and student placement. Before we begin, as an example of how up to date we are, I have here a plaque from the Pennsylvania School Board Association dated 2011 recognizing Dr. David Bender for 28 years of service.
They knew they couldn't be late because it was Bender.
We were saving it for just the right moment.
Would anyone like to address the board?
Congratulations.
Seeing no volunteers, we do have 3 sets of minutes. Has anyone found any discrepancies in those minutes that need to be addressed?
Bob, I'd just like to go to page 11 of the December 17th minutes. And I just had a question. I'd asked about the maintenance records on the field, and I'm not sure of Mr. Brady's response that there were 100 pairs found on the last maintenance service. I thought I heard something different.
I can review the record.
I remember we were marking about the number, but I don't remember the number. I remember that it was significant.
Okay. It just sounded to me like a lot for one maintenance.
I'll review it and correct it.
Any other items to be raised? We'll continue on then to business functions. Mr. Starr.
Okay, in letter A, attachment 5A, we'll be voting on the assessment appeal with Walmart. Mr. Mull, he's been handling this for quite some time. So based on everything, it looks like we have our final numbers, which is again attachment 5A. I believe this is the last of our large parcel appeals.
What was their original assessment? Do you have it?
Right, the original assessment was about 12 million, a little over 12 million.
A little over. So then does that mean that these assessments are retroactive, or?
Based upon the stipulation agreement for 2012, it's a difference in assessed value of 884,000. We have to refund about 26,000. 2013, we'll refund about $5,200. The common level ratio caused these numbers to increase. And going forward, July 2014, it is a difference in assessed value of about 140,000. So going forward, there's not much of a reduction. That really is impacting our revenue. Just going back that first year.
In attachment 5B, we will be voting on approving the submission of PlanCon Part J, which is for the Watton Creek construction project, for the final cost of that project, and finishing up our paperwork.
I have a question about that. Since we don't have a site work completed yet, how will that impact?
Well, you have 3 years to complete the construction. That was back in 2011. And we were getting these extensions because everybody likes to have everything completed. But the project itself is reimbursement is based upon formula. It really did not have anything to do with the actual total cost. It's based upon the rate that the state assigns to the people capacity of that building. So our reimbursement really is not going to be impacted by not having those two contracts completed. For some reason, the architect was waiting to sign off on the J05, their form, indicating everything was complete. I have no good reason why they waited, other than maybe they just wanted everything complete. But after discussions with them, they signed off, because really it's not going to impact our reimbursement.
Okay, thanks.
For letter C, we will be approving the submission of Plan Parquet to the Department of Education for the advanced refunding for the general obligation bonds 2009A and 2010, which just recently settled. Letter D, we will be sending off for the tax collector for collection for the remaining 2012 per capita bills. The numbers are 1186 per capita and 718 exonerated, as opposed to last year 1105 and 611. And that's the $10, correct? Yeah.
Right.
So we're doing that. The letter E, the number, we'll be able to fill in these numbers tonight. Approving the tax claim, the 2013 St. Lawrence real estate delinquent bills, $26,563.20, and the collection rate was 98.85%. And that's for St. Lawrence. Under letter F, for our township, Exeter Township, we do not have the numbers. We will have those on Friday. So we will be able to, we will have the numbers before. At least when we had looked at it, it appears that the numbers are going to be at least similar. We don't anticipate any huge issues.
I just had a question about the collection rate. Is that really high for St. Lawrence?
Well, last year was 97.4.
Yeah, so they did, so,
99% is good with anything.
yeah. No, I know, but
Yeah.
we should be proud of it, we should be very
Right.
pleased with it. It seemed to me that it had actually increased this past year, which we should thank St. Lawrence for.
And when we hand over the delinquent taxes to, who we hand it over to, do we ever get any of that back? Do they collect it, or
Oh, of course.
they collected all these?
It's the tax claim bureau accounting.
Okay, so they do the part. And then what percentage do they keep of that? What's their percentage? Do they have a percentage?
They have two methods of collection. Historically, their commission was 5%, but now what they've done is they're passing it along to the taxpayer, and it motivates the taxpayer to be a little more aggressive in their payment.
Did we ever get our tax bill settled with the one on Corporate Ridge, or whatever it was called?
Extra
Exeter Ridge.
They are paying quarterly installments, and they are paying.
So what would be that total amount when we get that collected? Very idea? Approximate.
Oh, 300,
That was about 400, but probably a little
between
under.
300,000 and 400,000, but I can let you know.
All right, that's good. Thank you.
In attachment, there's an attachment 5G. We'll be recommending approval of for us to ratify the agreement with the Act 93 employees effective July 1st, 2013 through June 30, 2016. So that's there for your review, which we discussed. And lastly, the budget transfers, which is attachment 5H. One other comment, just regarding the budget business functions, what we're going to do is, I know Tim and Pat had requested, wanted to talk about a couple things. So what we're going to do is, starting next month, the Monday before the workshop meeting, we will have the budget meetings. The first one we're going to do is, and I don't have the dates, but whatever the workshop meeting is, it will be the day before. So the first we're going to talk about some revenue generation, discuss some millage things initially, and then the next month we'll get into the budget itself and breaking it down, what we can and can't do, what we're looking to do. But the first meeting is going to be more of recommendations, discussion, things of that nature. So 6:30, if that's fine. If everybody can make it, that'd be great. But again, we'll just the Monday before the workshop meeting for the 4 months. Okay, that's it.
So for February, it would be the 10th. And we will have, those will be included on the dates to remember.
Any other questions or comments on
And the public
business?
is invited.
Oh, yes.
So the public is invited for, if you want to help us out with rectifying our budget.
Any other questions or comments for business? Dr. Bender, personnel.
For personnel, we have Part A, appointments, Part B, leaves of absence, and Part C, change of status. Any questions on A, B, and C? Part D, staff conferences, week before.
I just have a question about, the substitute teachers. Did we ever have it? Why are we having a substitute psychologist?
Pat, we have a psychologist out on leave, but it doesn't qualify as a long-term leave.
Oh.
So it's an extended day-to-day.
Oh, okay. I didn't know, I didn't think we put a substitute in, on a day-to-day basis. I mean, just for a day.
Right.
Okay, I was just
Right.
wondering.
It is unusual to
Yeah.
see that, but it's an extended day-to-day.
Oh, okay.
We need the services
Yeah,
performed.
I understand that.
That's it for personnel.
Any other questions? Comments? Student functions. Ms. Kitchen.
Item A, simply reporting the trips, the now babies, and then item B will be new booking for next week.
Questions, comments? You may set a record. Depending on Mr. King.
Yeah. It's all on you, Bill.
So the pressure's all on me.
Pressure is on you, sir. Personally responsible. Just like Governor Hersey.
Bill, repeat after me. My report speaks for itself.
I'm told my report speaks for itself. Actually, I'm not going to take all the blame. I'm going to call my 2 cohorts up here as well. As you can see from the report, I'm going to start kicking off here with the academic performance items that I included. We're very proud of these 2 items, more so the second one really, but the first one probably got more publicity at this stage of the game. As I'm sure you know, the Department of Education released its new school performance website, rating all public schools in the state. And the high school is one of 3 high schools in the county that achieved a 90% or above rating. So we were very happy with that. And that's based on both academic achievement, overall achievement for all students, academic improvement showed by students from their last testing period, which for many of them was 8th grade PSSAs up to the Keystone exams, and then other factors such as attendance and graduation rates. The second item there, the College Board honor roll. You know, when Dr. Martin sent me the copy of the letter over and I looked at it, I thought, wow, this is really great. It's because you have to do 2 things. One, you have to increase the number of students taking the test, while at the same time increasing the number of 3s, 4s, and 5s, the passing scores and the exemplary scores on the test, which is not necessarily an easy achievement. Typically, as you get more and more students involved in your AP program, your scores tend to dip a little bit because you're challenging some students who may not be as high flyers as some of the ones who typically go after the AP courses. And then I looked at it and thought, well, 477 districts were awarded this honor roll status across the United States and Canada. So I did a little Googling to find out what that meant. There are apparently over 13,000 public high schools just in the United States. So I have no idea how many there are in Canada. I didn't get that far with my research. So we're on a list of 477 of well over 13,000 schools. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dean to talk about the teacher effectiveness model.
Good evening. This year, obviously, we started off with the teacher effectiveness and its full implementation. And one of the things that we'll be doing, especially at the high school, is we have purchased the electronic teacher effectiveness porthole, which allows us to go into classrooms and do our formal observations for the Cycle 1 teachers, and it allows us to communicate with them and then for them to communicate with us in a timely manner. That said, there is a lot of lag time between the conversation. If I send an email to a teacher based on an observation and they send an email back to me, there's some wait time that takes place in there, but it does create a streamlined process so that nothing is missed, and should generate some good conversation, some rich conversation with our teachers based on what we're seeing and their input that they give to us based on what they felt that they were delivering. There's more meetings in this model here than there has in previous models as well. So with a pre-conference, your observation, your post-conference, a follow-up observation, there's just a lot more conversation that's taking place in this. So the benefits are that we're going to have a lot of very rich conversation. Obviously, the challenge of this is going to be the time factor, because all of these, the different layers certainly provides its own amount of time, not to mention, as I said, that time where you're waiting to get the reply to the email and that type of thing so that you can complete your observation. But that's what we're looking at so far, and we're looking forward to at least hearing some of the dialogue. We've had some decent dialogue with teachers so far, and looking to see how that goes the rest of the year.
So, how many teachers are in high school?
We have 101.
Well, with teachers, actual classroom teachers, 96.
96. So this is between you three and doing all this, 96 of those teachers? Wow, that's a lot of time.
Yes.
Wow. Whew.
Yeah.
Who thought that genius thing up, huh?
It was not me. That's all I can say.
Pardon me?
They're on cycles.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not all on
It's
observation.
a 4-year cycle, Pat, so we'll see roughly a quarter of those. Typically a little more than that, because any new teachers or teachers on instructional 1 certificates have to go through the clinical. So we may be looking at, what did we come up with? I think it was 32 or 33 this year.
Oh, I thought you had.
So that makes it more,
96
no,
this
I
year.
don't know how we do that.
That's what I was just wondering.
They have to evaluate all of them, but they don't have to do the formal
Oh, okay,
observation.
all right, well, I feel a little bit better about you guys being able to do that, because I couldn't imagine 96, I know these are just intense evaluations, and,
But as Mr. Kane said also, that in future years, any new teachers would still be in that cycle 1 until they've received tenure. So the potential for that number to rise or fall a little bit certainly is there.
You say in here that it's generated very good discussion between teachers and administrators. What's an example of that good discussion?
Well, I know that specifically speaking about the Cycle 2 teachers, I've met with a few teachers and we've had that conversation. Teachers that have come in and asked questions about how the Cycle 1 is going to work, what they're going to need to be able to demonstrate. Obviously, there's some concern about what types of information they're going to need to be able to demonstrate as it would apply to the rubric. And I've tried to reassure, as I think we all have, that really the evidence is king. That's kind of the phrase that I've been using. And there should be no surprises in this, because it's a collaborative effort. So when we say, I thought I was going to see this, but we didn't see it, and the teacher says, oh, well, I do have that, so can I forward that to you? And that would go into the overall packet of information that would be used at the end of the year to evaluate. And then we can have discussion about that. So I think that it is there is no once and done in this because there's so many different layers. And I think that that's where the richness of the conversation is going to take place, is where we think we see one thing and the teacher thinks that maybe they demonstrated something else, and being able to have that conversation and then maybe bring some additional supportive information into the conversation that may generate further conversation also.
I think as this thing evolves, there's always a lot of apprehension around change. This in particular, I think, brings a lot of apprehension to the table. And as we talk more about school climate, I think this becomes a factor in school climate where, you guys are going to you're going to drive this from how you approach, this thing. And I think what you said is the key. It's got to be a collaborative effort, and it's got to be perceived by our employees as a collaborative effort. It just can't be a gotcha. And I think that's everybody's fear with this. I think they look at how extensive it is. They look at the kind of proof that's needed, and I know my colleagues when we talk about it, there's just incredible amount of apprehension out there.
I think the 50% of the evaluation process, the clinical observation part that is based on the Danielson model, is actually the easier part, and the part that has people less apprehensive. Yes, there's a lot of presenting evidence and all of that, but it's all stuff that our teachers are doing. It's just a matter of maybe documenting a little bit better and having a little bit more extended conversation about it. I think where most of the apprehension falls is on the other half, where test scores come into play on the evaluation. For example, one of the reasons that school performance profile, no matter how much stock we may or may not put into it, is important to the teachers because that's 15% of every teacher's annual evaluation. So certainly they have a vested interest in that. So I think there's more apprehension on that side of it. Most of the apprehension for me on the Danielson side is just the amount of time it takes. It's good conversation. The ones we've done so far have been very, very positive. But it's time consuming, both in terms of actual time spent in conversation and, as Jason pointed out, elapsed time because the process itself gets stretched out quite a bit.
I would also say that it's not just extra work on our part, but compared to previous years, more on the teacher's part too, because they're used to having to do their lesson, and we're in there and we're busily writing. And then ultimately we sit down and have a meeting about that. But now they're providing a lot of evidence beforehand and after the fact, and it's set up to be much more collaborative, but it is definitely more work for both sides of the equation.
Do you have like a walkthrough prior to your formal observation? I think you were interviewing someone last for and maybe discuss that. Is that how you do? Is that how you do that?
The way it works right now is that I'll just give you a quick run through, is that we would set up through email or a conversation with the teachers, say we want to begin this observation with you. Let's set up a time for your pre-conference.
Oh, yeah.
And we would let them know what we need in advance, and then they would bring that either with them, or they can get it to us ahead of time so that we have an opportunity to look at it. And when we sit down at that pre-conference, they'll lay out the lesson and what they hope for us to see there, and covering the 4 domains. And then what we'll do is we'll make sure that there isn't anything that we need to see that we haven't seen, and if they didn't present it, that doesn't mean that they can't. Again, that goes back to the gotcha. If at the pre-conference that was the last straw, so to speak, then that would be a gotcha. But if they didn't bring something to the meeting and then having an opportunity to get it, and that's where the collaboration comes in. Then we set up the actual observation. We go in, we do the observation. After that, through the ETEP, there's forms that we're kind of sending back and forth to each other. Ultimately, we meet for a post-conference. We decide on some areas of strength, some areas of weakness, and then we set up basically a walkthrough observation at a later date, just to see how things have come along in terms of those areas of strength and weakness, and what they've done to accommodate for that. And that's pretty much the observation in a thumbnail sketch.
So you said cycle 1 teachers, cycle 2 teachers? What does that mean, like the newly hired teachers are the first teachers in cycle one?
Well, of the 96 teachers, 90, they're divided into different cycles, and the cycle ones are the ones that are getting the formal model that I just outlined for you. Then you have cycle 2 teachers that are doing some form of an independent or collaborative project independently, that their research-based project or performance-based project that they're working on within their classrooms. And we meet throughout the year with those teachers to find out how that's going, give them some feedback, and they make adjustments as need be. And then at the end of the year, there's obviously a culminating meeting where they're going to have all their information put together based on what they did throughout the course of the year to improve student instruction, and then the evaluation will be based on that.
And essentially, that is true for everybody in cycle 2, 3, and 4. And then each year you move to the next cycle. When you get back to 1 again, you're into the clinical observation process.
Oh, that's how this works, I see.
Yes.
I was going to move on to the learning-focused collaborative teams. There's a lot of collaboration going on at the high school. But the biggest thing here is that in the last 2 years we've worked on academic rigor and how can we push the academics with what's going on in the classroom, with kind of the policies and procedures behind what's going on in the classroom. How can we engage students better? Last year we added more of a data flair, if you will, using some of the CDT tests, different tests, both the Keystone test, the former PSSAs, and the Keystone exams. But all of that was done more or less after school hours. So the learning focused collaborative teams is built into the calendar. So the theme here is thank you. It's given teachers real time to collaborate. We appreciate it, the teachers have appreciated it. It's the first year we're doing it, so there's already been some positive results, and we're still continuing to fine tune what are the best ways to group teachers together to talk about instruction, but it is a tremendous resource that we're already tapping into very well, and it's only going to get better. So, thank you.
The next item is the Exeter Virtual Academy. That is a new adventure for us this year, if you will. Part of our attempt to supply to our Exeter students what they get by going off to a cyber school, a cyber charter school, such as Agora or someplace like that. We're still learning. It's new. This is the first semester. Part of what we're seeing is what we expected. A lot of students who want to go to cyber charter schools are not necessarily the best candidates for cyber charter schools. And so you can see at the end of it, I said our success rate right now is not real encouraging. At the end of one semester, our semester ends this Friday, we have 6 out of 25 virtual academy students who are on track to pass their classes for the first semester, to pass all of their classes. So it's not great, but one of the things we do have going for us, or at least those students have going for them, is a much, much more rigorous support system than they would have gotten, say, going to Agora. The Brandywine Brandywine Virtual Academy, the group that we have partnered with in this endeavor, I cannot say enough. I asked to be kept on the email list, to get copies of the emails that go to the guidance counselors, that go to the kids, that go to the parents. I believe Dr. Martin is still on it as well. Not a day goes by that I don't get a half a dozen to a dozen email copies from these people, things that are being sent out to parents, to kids. I noticed that you haven't done this much, or if you haven't logged on in this many days. Let's set up a phone call. Like, gee, you weren't there when I called. I mean, they just never stop following up. In addition, since they're still our students, our guidance counselors are also spending, and in my opinion, sometimes an inordinate amount of time, again, trying to support these kids and keep them on track, or get them on track if they're not. So again, it's new. We're learning. There are things we didn't anticipate in terms of the type of work we'd have to do that we're learning. We're writing some procedures. We're still dealing with the truancy aspect of it. Not exactly sure how we deal with that. It's not a case of, well, gee, you didn't go to school for so many days, so now you're truant. And how we handle it, we're not quite sure yet. We're working with Brandywine. Brandywine's working with, their other schools, and basically everybody's saying the same thing. Hey, if you find somebody who's got a good solution, let us know. We contacted Service Access Management, their truancy department. Richard Ford is their head truancy officer. He's working with us a little bit to try to set some things in place. But it's not easy, and a lot of these kids go to a cyber charter school specifically to avoid truancy problems. So, again, we're learning, we're working on it. Hopefully it will improve as we go along. But it's, I can't say that it's a resounding success at this part. There's been some encouragement. There have been some kids, who wanted to do it for a semester because of some specific family situation. A young man who is in junior ice hockey at a very, very high level, who's spent all his time in New England playing ice hockey, who are being successful at it. Okay, it's meeting their needs. They're able to continue going to school as Exeter students. But we still have a lot of work ahead of us. Russ?
Yeah, just a compliment, and I think, I will tell you that personally, I think one of the hardest things I ever learned in my whole life has been self-discipline. Went through a period of time where I edited books for about 6 years, and I did it out of an office in my house. You get up, you literally have to be your own monitor. And what I would suggest to you is, I wouldn't get discouraged with this because I think there's a learning curve to it. And I think it's a difficult skill to learn for these kids to make themselves go to school because there's no one watching them, there's no bells ringing, there's no, and it's a tough nut in that respect. I think there are many advantages to this, but I think what a kid has to bring to the table to be successful is a degree of self-discipline that a lot of teenagers just don't have. So hopefully what you're doing and what Brandywine is doing is constantly reminding them, you know what, you haven't logged on, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. I think if we stay on that and we stay the course on that, I think we can be successful with this.
And at this point, those cases where we are finding success, it's not a coincidence that those are the cases where a parent is at home very diligently monitoring that student. So, but you're absolutely right.
So the kids that are struggling in our school, they would have, the other alternative would have been to go to a different cyber school, had this done the same performance, and no one would have followed them. Is that basically what sort of goes on?
Yes, Carol. In my experience, that is what goes on.
The 25 is a much higher number than I think we expected, so that's very impressive. How many of those are were in other cyber schools, and how many?
Well, okay, this is not the question I've been looking forward to. But there are parts to this answer. The first answer is none. None of them came from other came back from other cyber schools to go to our cyber school. There were 5 or 6 that I could readily identify who would have gone to another cyber school instead of staying with Exeter.
Okay.
And we have 8 students back so far this year from cyber schools in the building. They came back from other cyber schools and chose to stay in the building rather than go to our virtual school. We have also had one return already after about 3 weeks in our virtual school and decided no, he was better off in the building. I think he recognized, or his mother or his father, somebody recognized that he didn't have that self-discipline.
Mr. Kane, secondary schools in public schools, our schools, they have to have, what, 1,000 hours of classroom time? Is it 1,000 or is it 900?
990. Yeah, I was going to say it's an odd number.
Yeah, 990?
Yeah.
Oh, aren't the cyber schools, shouldn't they have the same amount of time?
You know, I don't know.
They do.
Do they?
But I mean, you go in the mall and you see all these kids running around, teenagers, and they were supposed to be, doing their classes. And I think the problem is that these kids that go to cyber school, they oh well, I can do it, later. But then later is there's a TV program on, or there's a whatever, and I don't think they're getting nearly the instructional time that they're supposed to. So don't we get don't we get like, what is it, the average daily attendance? Don't we get reimbursed from the state for our average daily attendance? Right? Isn't that based on that, our subsidies?
Well, not their actual attendance, it's
Not theirs,
how many
but ours.
ADMs.
Ours.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
average
mean,
daily membership, it's used in a lot of different,
yeah, that's for our subsidy, right?
it's used in different subsidy
Yeah, because I remember the auditor saying that when he was here, that if you want to get better subsidy, you should have your attendance rate up. So why are we paying,
I guess that, but when we talk in terms of membership, and we're providing that number of hours of instruction for them. It's not whether or not they actually show up for all of
right,
it.
it's not whether they show up, it's if they're enrolled in the district.
Yeah, in the district, that's what I'm saying, yeah. And if they're absent, then we don't get.
No, the absentee, that doesn't really impact it,
Oh,
it's
it doesn't?
just membership.
Oh, membership,
Right.
oh, okay. Well, I just think something should be done to make sure that these children, because I don't think, when you look at the scores, the test scores, that come out from the state on the cyber schools, they're all far below ours for the most part. I don't think there's one cyber school that's anywhere near ours. And you got to have time on task if you want to be successful. And so I think there should be something done at the state level to either make sure they come, to our school, or that they are there working and that the time is on task.
You're certainly not going to get an argument from
I
me
know,
on that.
I know. I think I'm going to talk to my legislator. But it's very important that these kids, they can't spend 2 hours a week and think that they're going to, be successful.
I agree.
Yeah, well, that's my feeling.
Any other questions about the virtual academy? Back to Jason.
So talking a little bit about student behavior, and this has been, it's been interesting because obviously transitioning with the new assistant principal myself and having an opportunity to work with Mr. McFarland and Mr. Kane has been great, and we've been working pretty hard to make sure that we're communicating on a daily basis, more often than daily really, but also to make sure that there's some fidelity between how we are addressing discipline issues so that there's a kind of a fairness or an equity across the board. Obviously that's important. And we've seen some positive results in a couple areas that I had highlighted in your packet there. Just in terms of a few areas where we've seen some improvement over the same time period last year. Mentions the 13% reduction in the cutting of class, 20% reduction in chronic tardiness, 63% reduction in bus misconduct, and a 50% reduction in electronic device infractions. Obviously that is tied a fair amount to the fact that the policy around how electronics are used and not used at the high school has changed. But as someone who came as a skeptic over electronics policies, I've been very pleasantly surprised to see how well students are managing that on the whole. Other things that we've been doing, and largely led by Mr. McFarland, was some basic rewards for those that had the gold and silver card designation for honor roll or merit, and that we were able with the APT and some other local businesses to provide some really nice prizes that students were able to put a ticket in as a drawing, and whether it was Barnes & Noble gift cards or car washes or a VIP parking spot, some things that just were an encouragement to students that have been working so hard already, and we just wanted to say thank you to them. So those are some of the things that we've been doing to try and enhance the school culture from a behavioral perspective. Obviously, one of the things that we're looking at is chronic offenders of the discipline code. And both Mr. McFarland and myself, as well as Mr. Kane, have sat down and had conversation about that very thing and how do we address and improve or address the chronic discipline offender type situation, trying to reduce those numbers a fair bit. So we're going to have some further conversation is coming actually on Thursday with the guidance department to see if we can come up with some solutions. But in general, just the idea of, again, working with the teachers, with the guidance counselors, administrators, parents, and students to see if we can't put a dent in that number would be something that we're going to work on. Is there any other questions about that?
Yes, the 50% reduction for the electronic devices, could you pinpoint the policy changes that created that enormous shift?
Well, part of it is I think that it has just gotten, I think students are just doing a better job of abiding. But I also know that it used to be that cell phones were not allowed in hallways or cafeterias, and now students have been granted that privilege, although they're not allowed in the classroom. And so, whereas you had a student who maybe was walking down the hall in a previous year that had their cell phone out, the teacher saw it, and they had to address it, and so there was a consequence that would, a referral that would be put out for that. This year, if a student was walking down the hall and had their cell phone out, there wouldn't be that consequence because they haven't broken the rules.
But the hallways are moving well, and there's no...
Yeah, no problem at all
hassle.
with traffic or anything like that. I think part of it is, too, that the student knows. If he's sitting in class with 10 minutes to go and his phone vibrates, he knows 10 minutes later he can pull it out as he walks down the hallway, check it, put it away. So there's not that compulsion with constantly pulling it out every time it vibrates. They know in a very short time they'll be able to do this without disrupting a class, without violating any policy, regulations, anything like that. I haven't seen any difference whatsoever in the hallways.
So in other words, I'm getting to be too old. Can't shift with the times.
Well, the one thing that hasn't shifted is the students in the school want a voice, and that was part of what occurred here. If you think back to last spring, they wanted a shift in this policy a little bit. They wanted to advocate for themselves. They did so appropriately with the Student Functions Committee and in tandem with the administration. We tried it out for a couple weeks. We thought it worked well enough to try it for a full year, and it's come to pass. So I think that has had an impact. And they haven't. Students sometimes have shorter memories than we would like, but I think that's still part of their memories from last year, and saying that hey, they pushed for this and they're dealing with it very well and in a responsible manner.
And the 63% reduction in bus misconduct, is there something in particular that's wonderfully happened, or is this just a really nice class?
I pick a different bus every day and I go home on it.
Yeah, and you walk back, right?
I think that's an example of working together. Ms. Miser, myself last year, Mr. Dean, and I definitely prioritized that. It's both a behavior issue on the bus, but also a safety issue. You can't have it. And so being very, very proactive, timely, and firm in some cases, many cases, that this isn't something that we can put up with. So I think that's a case in point. Just a couple bus issues can really have a major impact on many students and families. So it's just something we need to tackle right away. So I would say it's just a case in point that we're trying to work together within the district, with families and with students to say this is not acceptable.
And I would say that it must be working pretty well, just because the bus drivers themselves have been good about communicating with us if there has been an issue, so that we can address it.
And to be honest, we're just following Mr. Art's lead there with the junior high. He does a heck of a job in helping work with us too, because it's junior high and senior high, the kids on the buses.
I want to compliment you
and
on...
Mr. Flam.
I want to compliment you on this dramatic set of percentages, and I also appreciate that there are classes that are wonderful, and then there are classes that you wish were wonderful. So I can live with some variation on this. I don't expect 50, 63% every year, but this is really wonderful. And if you do it every year, well, my goodness, I'll just have to go home. Thank you.
Mr. Kane, we have the 2 accidents that happened in the last 2 weeks, so you'll be communicating with the kids about walking to school.
I sent home a Connect Ed this evening to all of our students and parents about the need, mostly the parents, to talk with their students, to those students who are walking, to be more attentive when they're walking, especially being careful crossing the streets, because you know, Carol's concerned about kids going down the hallway with their phones. Well, that's how they go down the street too. Unfortunately, they often drive that way too with the phone at their ears. So I sent a connect home tonight to please talk to them, and also to talk to their, you know, the older teenagers who are drivers, about not only driving carefully but driving defensively. So I mean, that's where it has to start. I mean, obviously, you know, we're going to look at everything we can.
Some parents can benefit from that message as well.
Yes.
I live in that neighborhood, and I have seen that sometimes parents are worse offenders than the kids are.
Yeah. But yeah, I sent home a message to this evening. Matter of fact, they're probably getting it after we're standing there talking.
Mike, Mr. Japina beat me to the punch, and Susan and Christy can ignore me, but the rest of you principals, if you sit on my front porch some evening, some afternoon,
Are you inviting
watch
us?
the people come out of there,
No, you're not. The
you
rest of
will
us.
see bedlam. And
Coming out of your front porch?
no, coming out of your high school.
Oh.
I just happen to have a good way of watching. And, well, it was better when I was there. But
The horse and
I've
buggies
also-
didn't go as fast.
I've also got neighbors who have children in the junior high that are afraid to let them walk to school. Because if they leave and go to walk to school, some idiot coming to the high school is going to run them over. And if my brain trust could put your heads together and figure out a way that we can somehow enhance the safety of our kids, both in the cars. I mean, there's a stop sign at the corner of Woodland and 36. It's used all day except when the school's dismissing. And you can just watch them drive right on through it. It's as though it isn't there. And
It's mostly a suggestion rather than...
it's not even a suggestion, it's something to be ignored. But, you know, it is a safety concern. When the kids are afraid to walk to Rifton or afraid to walk to the junior high, and it's the parents, and I don't know, bring state cops in, you know, bring strips in to puncture the tires, whatever you think. But if we could put something together to somehow get it under control.
I can tell you it's a regular topic of conversation at safety committee meetings.
I imagine so.
We have worked with the Exeter Township Police. They've had their traffic officer examine both the junior high and the senior high, you know, to look at the traffic flow, to look at the options. We get recommendations from Mr. Wegman and his bus drivers, because they see a lot of things also, obviously.
I know it's nothing new.
Yeah,
It's nothing
not
that you're
new,
going to
it's
solve.
not an easy solution.
But
Yeah.
you know, we've had 2 injuries in 2 weeks now. And I just don't want to see something more serious than what has happened now. And I know that this is off school property, but there are kids. And anything we can come up to enhance that situation.
Bill, how much of a issue is it that not as many kids take advantage of our buses as can? You know, kids decide not to use the buses.
I mean, when you have approximately 400 students driving to school every day and buses that are half empty, sure, it's part of the issue.
Well, not just the drivers, but those who may get dropped off by parents, adding to, you know.
Well,
And not only that, but why would students be crossing Perkiomen Avenue? Certainly there's a bus that would pick them up, because that's a dangerous road.
yeah, well, there are buses that transport anybody who lives on the other side of Perkiomen Avenue. But it's their choice.
Right.
I do know, I mean, having had 4 children go through the high school, I know that it's not cool to ride the school bus.
I know that, but it's
and
cool to
that's-
stay alive.
That is quite honestly part of it.
Safe.
Yeah. when you're 14 or 15 or 16, the idea that you won't be staying alive never occurs to you.
I know.
I've got family that lives on the west side. Of course, I used to live on the west side, and I used to walk to school. And they were near where I grew up, and they would still rather walk to school because 3 years ago, there was a bully on the school bus, and they won't get on a school bus to this day. So there's many things that cause the, quite frankly, it's a nice walk, but very enjoyable walk. But if you just think about it, you can't, I know you can't solve it, but we can somehow come on up and I'll give you a couple of fingers and we'll watch the people go home at night.
Okay.
I might not be a bad idea.
Sounds like an offer I can't refuse.
Just kidding.
I'm just going to finish up with the major events. I'm not going to go through all those, but there are a couple of omissions there. I forgot to list there that we will be hosting in 2 weeks the County Music Festival, which would be county band, county orchestra, and county chorus. So that's 2 weeks from this Saturday. So if you have an opportunity, if you have ever been to a county music event, it's absolutely amazing. You would think you were listening to professional musicians. And we're actually going to host them this year at the high school. And then I have one other piece of news.
What time is that?
Pardon me?
What time is that?
7 o'clock, I believe, is the start time for the concert.
Is it going to be on the
Do you have a website, Bill?
Not to my knowledge.
We can put it on.
Yeah, we can certainly put it on. I'm sure Mr. Farrell will probably be recording it at any rate. We could always put on the recording after the fact. And then a couple of names that I'd like to put in, or at least recognize, because it happened after this was done. We had a number of students, as I mentioned, in here who qualified for district band, district orchestra, district chorus. Well, 2 of our students who qualified for district chorus, auditioned for regional chorus, and both were awarded the first chair in their voice parts in regional chorus, meaning they have an excellent opportunity to qualify for state chorus. Doesn't happen often. Pardon me?
Do you have their names?
James Demore as bass, and Allison Geringer as the second soprano. Any other questions, comments, suggestions?
Well, I just want to say, I am so thrilled to see your, in the behavior and the reduction in misconduct, because last year when you presented it, I was shocked at how many inferences there were and infractions and everything else. So I think, I'm glad you addressed that issue, and I think it's, when kids are engaged, good things happen, just like with the Keystones and everything else. And I found something that I think probably you guys are really doing, and I just want to read it to you. It says, schools should be a place where teachers are trusted, students are challenged, and parents are engaged. When that happens, students show up and teachers stick around, and that alone can boost student achievement. So I don't know who wrote it, but I copied it from someone, and I think you guys are doing that, and I commend your staff and the leadership team.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
4 minutes more, you went 3 times or something like the meeting. I commend you. It was a short night. Are there any other matters to come before the board?
Bob, I would just like to congratulate our colleague Russ Kiesinger, who is retiring this week as a teacher in the Reading School District, and I want to say thank you for committing yourself to teaching the children of Reading and for being a teacher, and I wish you the best of luck in retirement and in a future run for office, maybe.
You're here.
Yes.
Can I make a comment? No.
Would you stop if I said no?
Yes.
Okay.
This is what I need to say. The 15 years that I was at Reading High School, probably the most meaningful, most purposeful work I have ever done in my life. It was rewarding every day. It was a roller coaster ride too. The frustration, read the stuff in the paper, you know about the frustration. And so a great deal of frustration there. And my greatest frustration obviously was I always thought we could fix it. I still believe that to this day. I thought we could fix some of the problems of urban education. But when you look at, I think we talked about it a little bit here today, and that when we were talking about cyber schools, the importance of parents and their involvement with their kids' education. There is no replacement for that. So in that respect, I commend our community because I think we're very fortunate that for the most part we have parents who are involved in their kids' lives, and that just makes success a whole lot easier. I've had a really good ride at Reading High School. I've been very grateful and honored at times to be part of a profession that I think makes a difference in the world. It makes a difference in the lives of kids every day. And I would also just say it's not a run in the future. It's a run that's going on right now. And so if you did not catch Saturday's Reading Eagle, I have announced my candidacy for the Democratic nomination for the state legislative seat in the 130th district. And I look forward to the challenges of both the election and then beyond the election. But thank you for your congratulations. It's the reality of it hasn't sunk in yet. So, and it's only 3 days away. I packed up my desk today. It's all in my series. Yeah, I know.
Thank you. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.